Welcome back to Games Revealed. I'm James and also The Brink, and we're going to get into the decision I made yesterday. That is to get the Odin by Ian, or however you pronounce that. This is not going to replace my Steam Deck videos. I'm not going to, this is going to be, you're just going to be getting the Odin and Steam Deck videos along with my game videos. So it is a good thing for everyone. More content. I'm excited to get this device in my hands someday whenever it ships, and I'll let you know when it does. It definitely looks like there's been some setbacks, and I think people have been getting their devices, but once again, with these types of campaigns, there's always, I feel like with every Kickstarter and Indiegogo campaign, there is some type of setback that makes it so that they don't ship on time. Let's get into a little bit more detailed look of this device. I went, just to start out with, in fact, before we really start, make sure to like, subscribe, and bash that bell with your crowbar. It really helps, so thank you guys. Let's get started now. The Odin Pro is what I went with, and the reason is because it's, it's the best. I have a hard time whenever I look at these things and like, yeah, I'm gonna get the Lite because it'll probably do what I need to do with the emulation, and then I get looking, I'm like, I gotta have the premium product. What ifs, it's always the what ifs, and so unfortunately, I went down that route with this. And fortunately, like I mentioned in my last video, I don't like having multiple choices, especially when it comes to CPU, GPU. I do like a lot of options and choices, but when it comes to this type of thing, I like to have one, maybe two choices. And they need to be very specific in why there are more than one choice. And I feel like they kind of failed in this Indiegogo to really explain that, at least from what I could glean. But there are three: Light, Base, and Pro, and they're all great options. You also got the dock right here. We'll talk about that in a little bit. This dock is, to be honestly, like this should be the go-to in the industry for what kind of dock you should make for these portable devices, because it has got about everything. The Odin Lite starting at 198 USD. This is, so this is like a Chinese device. Most devices are. You got lots of different colors. You got a lot of different variants of this. And like I said, not the biggest fan sometimes of that. Colors, love it. 20 colors, love it. If they can do that. I went with, let's go to the Pro. I went with the black one. I was going to go with the white. I'm not normally a white person. A white case kind of color person. I like black more for my devices. I think it tends to be also more of a gamer IT kind of thing. But the white was in the super pack, and just everything that came in the super pack, it seemed like some of it just might be just too cheap, and I didn't care about the price tag with it. So I just went with the Pro and the dock and a case, and it ended up costing about $350. Not too big of a deal. It is a lot of money. It's, the price if you're going to get a Switch, I think OLED, right? But I already have a Switch. I don't really care to get the OLED version. I want to try this out. I want to try emulating, and they had stuff like GameCube, N64. They have ports in the dock for that. So that was really intriguing for me. I kind of wish they had PlayStation ports too, because that's ultimately probably one of the biggest things I'll be playing on this is RPGs, old school RPGs I used to play. But yeah, the Pro, $350. That was including shipping, $350 including shipping. And I am not sad in any way that I had to spend that. A couple of notable things that caught my eye. The dock, for sure. At first, I didn't care about the dock, but then as you get going into the dock, you're like, this is pretty sick. And if the Steam Deck actually had a port at the bottom instead of the top, this still could be compatible with the Steam Deck, I'd potentially assume. A lot of the I/O and because this probably is very similar to just a dongle that you can get for laptops and the Steam Deck. It's just in a different form factor. So I bet you potentially the hardware could support this. But the Rumble, it has Rumble. It has HDMI video out, just support you. Like, you don't have to have multiple dongles. It just supports HDMI out either through a HDMI cable or through the USB-C. Really, this is the way to go, I think. Steam Deck, I'm fine with them having one port. I wish they would have two USB-Cs though. And I actually kind of wish it was at the top and the bottom so you had a choice. That's one of the probably biggest gripes I have with the Steam Deck is it just doesn't have an additional port on the other side. I get it. They probably couldn't fit it in very easily, but it is what it is. Well, another cool thing is they have great software for mapping. So a lot of games on Android or on emulators sometimes don't map to these controllers very well that are built into these devices. And so they make it really easy for you to map and change your mapping, right? So that if you want a button to do something different, you can. And that's very crucial in supporting a lot of different devices. Well, devices and games. So the operating system is interesting. This can support, it comes with, depending on what version, and that's another weird thing. The light version comes with Android 11. The Pro and base version come with Android 10. I don't know why they went that route. I'm usually with every version of Android, I feel like it gets a little bit more optimized for certain CPUs, GPUs, and devices. So maybe that's why they went with that. With the light, I don't fully know. It could also be software that they've created is better supported in other, operating systems. So the cool thing about this is you can put Windows ARM on this. So Windows does support ARM. You can put Windows on it, and it does have an emulation kind of layer in it. So if you put Windows on it, and then do the emulation on it and on certain games will work. So there are games that if you install Steam on this device and you turn on that emulation piece, you potentially could get it to work in Windows on this games, and I'm going to really vet that out. So when I get my device, I'll let you know what games work and how well they work. I'm not getting this for PC gaming. Ultimately, I'm getting this for emulation. But this is a really interesting route they're going, and it could be a competitor in the near future if Microsoft actually, picks up on like, hey, let's make sure this works really well on these devices. And ultimately, it also does come down to whether or not the game creator wants to support an ARM device too, or how well the emulation or, that layer in Windows works with ARM. This is going to be a very interesting aspect to competing with, I think, Steam Deck in the long run. We'll see. Ultimately, I don't think this device is going to compete too hard with the Steam Deck. I could be wrong about that, though. I still want a Steam Deck, and that still will probably be my ultimate device. This is still for a family device, for my kids, for me, and just everyone to play, like sit down and play old school games. It sounds really fun. And from my understanding, the performance is amazing on it for what you get. I mean, I shouldn't say, okay, I'll backtrack a little bit. I was watching some videos and some of the emulators were getting, they'd start at about 50, 60, and then they'd drop to about 30, but then they'd stay consistently 30 frames per second, which from my understanding with like old school games is fine with emulation. So it should be fine. Once I get it in my hands, I'll let you know. I'm not too concerned about this. This really is an investment for the channel and also for my family. So ultimately, I got to do something while I'm waiting for that Steam Deck. Okay, this dock is so cool. It has actual N64. It has 64 controller interfaces. First up, you could probably go with the USB versions too, but I might actually get just the N64 with the original controller interface. Just for the heck of it. I mean, it seems cool. Then you also have 5 USB ports, 3.0 ports, a gigabit Ethernet, a Type-C input, which will also probably be the power, right? So that Type-C is for power, almost guaranteed. And then on the side, it has GameCube controllers. And then this is the surprise right here. This is the thing that I am excited for. It has a 2.5-inch SATA HD bay, hard drive bay, and so you can slap in any type of they used to be laptops. No, I don't know about laptop, but they're smaller hard drives, and you can slap them into here. You could even fit an SSD hard drive. There's a lot of different things you could do with this enclosure, and this is how docks should go from now on. Steam Deck needs to learn from this. So when you dock your system, you get a bunch of other games and additional software unlocked. You know, when you dock it, then you can access those in the other drive. I like this route. I really hope that we go this route, and this will make work using the Steam Deck as a workstation even more viable. And I'm curious how this is, because you can put Windows on this, Windows ARM. I'm curious how much you could actually get done work-wise from a developer standpoint on this. I'm also curious about Linux on it. I mean, Linux would work too. There's a lot I'm curious about. I want to get the SteamOS 3.0 on this device and just see how it runs. Curious. I don't know if it will support ARM. Not 100% sure about that. I do know that there's Linux versions that support ARM. So, yeah. Once again, colors. I went with black, but they also have white. They also have a gray. Then they have the transparent black, purple. I'm not a big transparent person. I think it can look cool. It feels so dated though. Yeah. The black with this LED on the joysticks just looks sick. And I really do like it on the white also. But once again, I had to get the full bundle to get that white, and I just didn't want it. And it was only going to cost me an extra $20, $30. I just ultimately decided not to. Now, let's get into the specs now. So they have like price comparisons here. And, you know, I'm not going to go too far into that, but I'm not going to go at all into that. But let's go into these different versions. So the base Pro has a Qualcomm Snapdragon. It's a little bit older version from my understanding of a Snapdragon processor, but it does have the gold and silver versions, which I'm assuming goes base and Pro. And then the GPU, an Adreno 630, clocked at 787 megahertz. That, you know, it feels like a fairly common route to go GPU wise for a mobile device, where it's not an APU, you know, like with the Steam Deck, that's an APU, where AMD essentially on the same chipset puts a CPU and a GPU, and then they're both made by the same manufacturer. I feel like there's a lot of benefit from that if done right. With this has been run for a decade plus with this type of configuration, where they do have like Snapdragon and Adreno or some other different type of like a GPU like the Mali. Yeah. So it's not a bad route, and and by now they've got a lot, you know, it works well enough. I just would prefer the APU route, in my opinion. You can let me know if I'm wrong in the comments below. That's just my preference from what I've seen of multiple different devices. But, you know, preferences, and also I could just be wrong. RAM, 4 gigs for the base, 8 gigs for the Pro. Lite also has 4 gigs. And then storage is interesting. They do the UFS 64 and 128 gigabytes versions. And the 120 gigabyte, I believe, is only in the Pro. Yeah, and it kind of highlights it. I went with that, and you can actually even upgrade to the 256, and I almost did. But really, what I'm going to be doing on this device, if I was using this as a main or even as a portable Windows device, then I would go with the 256 upgrade on that storage. I just did want to spend an extra $40 on this, to be honest, and it supports an SD card, so I really don't need the extra space. I'm going to be just fine, just, you know, doing my emulation off this. It's going to be able to hold most of the games I'm going to want to play, so no big deal. Another interesting thing is they went with a 1080 screen, where like the Steam Deck is an 800. And I get why the Steam Deck did that. I kind of hope in the future, like Steam Deck 2 is a 1440, just because also the media you consume on there does get more crisp. I know that a lot of people say, hey, it doesn't matter, but it really, really does matter, in my opinion. That screen size still does matter, but battery performance, I get it. Steam Deck isn't going to get as good of battery if the resolution's higher. I get the balancing purposes behind it. I still like a 1440 on a smaller device like this. So 1080, we'll see. I actually like that price point, or the size, the resolution on that point, but it's still potentially going to affect the battery life, which I heard is actually not bad, but it's a large range. It's 3 to 12 hour battery range on this device, depending on what you're playing. That's massive range. And like always, I like to go in the middle a little bit. So I'm assuming we're going to get about 6 hours. Let's say if I'm playing an N64 game on this, I'm going to get about 6 hours playing that. If that's true, awesome. It is a fairly large battery at 6,000 milliamp. And so we're going to, it's going to be decent. I think everything's going to be decent on this. It's going to be interesting. Let's get a little bit more specs in, and then we can wrap this video up because this is a long video. Okay, so like I said, has HDMI, but also has DisplayPort support too, which is an interesting one that the Lite doesn't have. I believe, I don't know if it has an actual port on the top. It's running it through the HDMI. So maybe they're just saying, hey, if you have an adapter that can convert from HDMI to DisplayPort, it supports it. Not sure about that. Audio seems, I don't understand the audio on that. So seems like, I'm sure it's decent enough. The Wi-Fi is, this one supports, yeah, it supports different bands, right? It supports a lot of different Wi-Fi, and then the Lite supports Wi-Fi 6, which this is an interesting one. This one, the Lite definitely seems like a better device in some aspects, and then others, I'm just like, what are you doing? So, let me know in the comments below what you think of these specs. I've been out of this realm a little bit for the past few years, doing other things with programming, but I'm getting back into it, and I want to get back into this as soon as possible. So let me know. Okay, so 5,000 milliamp battery, 6,000 milliamp battery, depending on the versions you go with. Android 10, 11, like I said, fast charge and quick charge. I can't remember which one's better, but that's awesome that it can do the quick charging, which usually means you can charge about half your battery in about 10 minutes is what I remember on some devices. So I mean, it's pretty standard though. This is essentially a phone built into a gaming device. This is really what this is, and it is Android, and it does have a launcher. So how the operating system works is that it's kind of a custom version of Android, kind of. It pops up with Android. It has a splash screen of the Odin, and then it boots into the launcher, I believe. And I believe you have just the base launcher of Android, and then you have the Odin launcher. And the launcher just is essentially just how you interact with the base operating system, like what icons you see, what kind of experience you have when trying to interact with the device. Tends to be a little bit more what the launcher is. It's not like a full refresh. Like, it's not like two different versions of Android. It's just, it's a skin on top of Android. This is going to be a pretty badass option, as opposed, if you have to wait for a Steam Deck or you really just want emulation, this sounds like it's going to do an amazing job, and that's what this is geared towards. For everything else, I'll let you know how it goes when I get mine. And let me know in the comments below if you're thinking about getting this device while you wait for the Steam Deck, or if you just plan on getting this device over the Steam Deck. Me, I would rather have a Steam Deck, and ultimately, if I was choosing right now, if I could only have one or the other, I'd be going with the Steam Deck. My honest opinion, I'd still go with the Steam Deck. I like Valve a lot. Steam, I've supported them since day one. I will continue to support them for a good long while. I think this would be a good option if you don't plan on doing a lot of PC gaming, but a lot of emulation and just playing older school games. You're probably going to be just fine with this device. But me, I ultimately would choose the Steam Deck, but I'm choosing both, and I want to give you guys great content. So that's a big reason that I'm getting this, but I'm also getting it for my family, and I think they're going to love it. So in the end, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time. Later!